we're going to explore how to radically cut retirement expenses before you retire or even while you are in retirement. So stay tuned for the full episode. Welcome back. This is Richard with Wisdom Investor. And yes, folks, with the high cost of inflation, you want to start controlling your expenses prior to retirement. If you get on a fixed income in retirement and you haven't controlled your expenses, it's going to be much more difficult to try to get into that pattern. So it's very important to start controlling expenses prior to retirement. We're going to look at some exciting ideas here today on how to do that. Here's a recent headline: inflation rises 7% over the past year, highest since 1982. Here's where inflation is hitting us the hardest, according to the U.S. Labor Department. This is from November 2020 to November 2021. I'm going to share some ideas here of 3 major areas where we spend the most. And by the way, if you have some ideas that's worked for you, share those ideas. It's much appreciated. This first area we're going to talk about here are ways to cut expenses before your retirement or if you're already retired. This first area is lower food and grocery costs. Number 1, use digital coupons to save on grocery expenses and food costs. We're not talking about cutting coupons out of the paper here. With this new concept of digital coupons, it makes it a lot easier and more efficient to save money on grocery and food expenses. I'll tell you why I got excited about these digital coupons. I was looking at a stock report this week. This is a weekly stock chart of Groupon. And if you look out here to the right, you'll notice the stock jumped 26% this week alone. But it started to make sense because with inflation, people are starting to look for ways to cut their expenses. Here's a website I found, bestapp.com. They give the best coupon apps for 2022. Now you can still cut coupons out of the paper, but these digital apps may be ways to find coupons more efficiently. Here's the top 10 coupon apps from bestapp.com. They got the top pick as Rakuten, Groupon, we just mentioned that a minute ago, best restaurant coupons, and they also have foods. Best free version, Retail Me Not. Best for groceries, Checkout 51. If you've used any of these apps, leave a comment. I'd like to know how it's working out for you. Here's some other common sense ideas on lowering food and grocery costs. Number 2, plan meals ahead of time. 3, don't throw away leftovers. 4, go to the grocery store on a full stomach. Now I will say this, I go to the grocery store and I'm hungry. I have a tendency to want to buy a bag of chips or a bag of cookies, and it not only costs more for those items, but they don't take care of your appetite. Number 6, avoid eating out to drastically cut expenses. Now one thing I'll do if I'm going to be out for the day, I'll put some food in these little sandwich bags. Here's some vegetables, and I'll use these to eat during the day and get some nourishment. That way I don't have to stop and eat out. It's very expensive now to go in and eat out. Fast food can be much more expensive. I'll even bring some nuts here, like a trail mix, or maybe even put a piece of chicken, a breast of chicken in one of these little sandwich bags. Number 7, buy generic to save money. And number 8, make coffee at home to cut expenses drastically. Let's look at our next category, lowering housing costs to cut expenses. So there's various ways that we can be creative with our house to lower expenses and generate revenue. For example, rent out a room. If you're not comfortable renting out a room, you could rent out a room or rent your house for a weekend, say on Airbnb. You could go somewhere else, maybe a friend's house, a relative's house, and rent out your entire place for the weekend and generate revenue to help you save money. Also, if you have a garage, you can rent out your garage space. Here's a site, neighbor.com. There's other sites like this. You can check them out. But you could generate revenues by renting out space in your garage or maybe even rent out your parking area. I've listed some additional ideas here to lower housing costs. 2, you could refinance mortgage, check for cheaper homeowners renters insurance. You could also move locations to cut expenses and downsize your home. But this is a little bit more difficult nowadays because just about wherever you go, it's going to be more expensive. So you got to really do your homework if you're going to move or downsize. Our next category here is check your utility bills for savings. Now some of these, I'm sure some of you are already doing these, but these are some good basic ideas. Use programmable timed outlets. Now this is an interesting idea here. I ran across a friend a few years ago, said he goes around and unplugs all the electrical outlets whenever he leaves the house. Because a lot of these electrical appliances, they're draining electricity. They have a current that's consistently being used to keep the timers up to date, various other information. So you may want to get a timer here. And then cut expenses dramatically on transportation. So I want to just talk about this for a second. So I want to briefly talk about transportation costs. I myself live up here in Washington State, and my wife and I were planning on visiting Florida, and we didn't want to drive. So we flew down to Florida. So prior to going down to Florida, I did my research on the area I was going to go to. Since we didn't have the car, I wanted to use the local bus system. So I looked for an area that we could visit that had good bus system. Here's a map of Orlando, for example. And so in addition to having a good bus system, I looked for an area that had services, say within a mile of where we were going to be, like grocery stores, churches, various shops, so that we could stay pretty much in a small radius. Then once we arrived, we purchased a bicycle for each of us. Now I know not everybody wants to ride a bicycle or maybe can ride a bicycle, but we use the bicycles to go out and investigate various areas. We could use the buses to take us to different areas, then from there spread out with the bicycle. Now in the United States, if you're going to travel, you really need to have a car. And so what we did, since we did not have a car, we rented a car for 3 days. If we wanted to go to the beach and back, we would rent a car from a rental agency locally there. We found a place that rented the car for $39 a day, which was incredible. If you go to your major car rental companies, it's probably going to be $75 to $100 per day. So car expenses, transportation costs is expensive. If you have some additional ideas you'd like to share, leave a comment. They're much appreciated. I want to thank you for watching here today. I hope some of these ideas here will be able to help you. Again, leave a comment. Appreciate you watching. Stay tuned for our next update.